After numerous Disney Plus flops, Marvel Studios is restructuring their TV division, lending credence to the claim that the new WGA deal would eliminate woke diversity hires. Let's get into this here. I'm going to provide some context about that claim. That claim came from screenwriter Script Doctor, who detailed how the WGA deal would eliminate woke diversity hires during an appearance on Midnight's Edge in the Morning Show. I was like 2 Fridays ago. He explained why this would be the case. So basically, what we are seeing here from the youngins is there's going to be possibly less opportunities for them, especially in something like the pre-greenlit or meeting rooms, and that comes down to 2 factors that I can think of right now. The first one is that the current NBA clearly defines that a showrunner has to be a union writer. So it can't be an internal executive producer like a Kevin Feige. It also gives them a bit more power into who they select for the writing positions in the minimum staffing mini rooms. And it also says that whoever they select has to be approved by the company, or the showrunner has to argue for them to be involved. Now, with regards to those rooms, you have showrunners that would only, a real showrunner, a good showrunner, is only going to hire writers that they are going to get value out of in their room, which means that if you are a diversity hire and that's all you've got going on, you are of no value to a showrunner, which means you are not going to get your guaranteed hire over there, and I think that's a good thing. As for the second point, he said, the other aspect with regards to the contract pertaining to mini rooms is that the compelled hiring has now increased. The compelled hiring and the extended time frame for which they have to work on the show, which is like the minimum of 10 weeks. That essentially turns the mini room into something more expensive than the traditional model of developing a pilot, producing a pilot to be screened before an audience test to see whether or not it's actually going to be good, and then giving it the green light to go into an actual series order. The mini room basically tries to force a hit show within a 6-episode or 8-episode or 10-episode structure, get it all written before any of it is filmed, and then push it out there, which is what we've seen with all of these Disney Plus shows. That is the model that Marvel had embraced and were doing. They had rejected the traditional pilot model that TV had been following for years. He went on to provide an example. He actually uses Ahsoka, Disney product from Lucasfilm. He says you can take a look at a pilot like Ahsoka and say to yourself, okay, that's a show that was done in a mini room. It was done by one writer, Dave Filoni, and if you put that through the pilot test, there's no way it would have been picked up for the remainder of the episodes, and that's a good thing. You don't want that. So right now, it looks like mini rooms are kind of being, for the moment, they'll be kind of priced out on a budget side of things from the studio because it's more lucrative and less risk for them to actually go back to shooting a pilot, testing it, and then determining whether it's going to be given a series order, as opposed to building a show in a limited amount of time and then just pumping it out for you to be stuck with it and can't control, develop, or change it based on audience reception. He then asserted, and when you have these types of orders and you have the showrunner being in charge of it and picking the writers they want to work with and being able to argue why they need it for the benefit of the show, you then basically exclude any of the writers in town that are not going to be of value to you. And I think everybody listening and gentlemen on the panel, I know these types of writers are not going to be lasting in this industry because they're not qualified, and I think that's great. I think that's great that there's less jobs for them because that gives me a better chance for having more opportunities. So that context is really, I think, key on what he says here, because this new report notes that Marvel Studios will be moving away from that kind of pre-greenlit model, that mini room model that Script Doctor was talking about, where they approve an entire show and put it into production without producing a pilot and having it tested to determine whether it should be greenlit or not. Boris Kidd at The Hollywood Reporter explained, showrunners will write pilots and show Bibles. The days of Marvel shooting an entire series from She-Hulk to Secret Invasion, then looking at what's working and what's not, are done. So clearly changing their entire model. This is what Script Doctor was talking about, that they would be going back to this traditional television model under the new WGA. We're already seeing that happening here at Marvel Studios. Kit also kind of goes on and says they also plan on hiring seasoned full-time TV executives to run their TV operations instead of borrowing from their film division. That's almost what Script Doctor was saying as well, too, that they would have to be hiring qualified screenwriters and television executives to run the show rather than having like a stand-in like Kevin Feige or some other Marvel Studios executive filling that position. To this extent, Marvel's head of streaming, television, and animation, Brad Winderbaum, confirmed these changes, noting it's a term, and he's referring to showrunner here, we've not only grown comfortable with, but also learned to embrace. He added, we need executives that are dedicated to this medium, that are going to focus on streaming, focus on television, because they are two different forms. I think they're very similar. And the more we see what's happening with streaming, it's becoming more and more like linear television. They're obviously trying, Disney has made it very clear, Bob Iger has made it very clear, he wants to push people to the ad platform that Disney Plus now has. So I would not be surprised if they start crafting shows around putting ad breaks in like you do with a traditional linear television model, where you have those ad breaks and stuff. And I actually think that would improve the writing. I did a whole stream with Script Doctor on this, and he actually kind of agreed with me that when you have those ad breaks, I think he posited it. When you have those ad breaks, it forces you to kind of like make sure that the viewer stays on. So you have to like actually write a compelling story because you don't want them to click off when you get the commercial and then they're off doing something else and they're not watching your show again, and your ratings decline and you're no longer getting ads or commercials on your show and you're canceled by the end of the season. But as far as Winterbaum's overall outlook with these changes, he explained, we're trying to marry the Marvel culture with the traditional television culture. It comes down to how can we tell stories in television that honor what's so great about the source material. So that is something that I think is also key there too, is he's signaling that they want to actually honor the source material. We know from Phase 4, they did not honor the source material at all. They completely disrespected it, undermined it, wasted it, destroyed it, did everything they could to basically thumb their noses at the source material, at the fans who love the source material. And it looks like now we are seeing some signaling, at least in what they're saying, that they want to honor the source material. Whether or not we see any kind of fruits of that, whether those fruits are actually good fruits, will be determined later on when we actually see what they have created. But it does look like they are making significant changes to how they're structuring their television department. Interestingly enough, this also comes in the wake of comments that Bob Iger made in a CNBC interview back in July. So he's kind of signaling that these changes were probably already in the works. He was asked by CNBC's David Faber, is there a problem, though, at Disney Animation? Is the loss of John Lasseter years ago been a blow that you haven't been able to recover from? And Iger said, well, first of all, the studio and its movie assets are #1 at the global box office so far. That said, we are extremely realistic, and I am very objective about that business. There have been some disappointments. That's a little bit of an understatement. There have been massive disappointments at the Disney box office in 2023. I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is the only film that has been profitable for them. Every single film, other film, has been multi-million dollar losses, tens of millions of dollars on each film. They've lost hundreds of millions of dollars this year just at the box office. We would have liked some more of our more recent releases to have performed better. Again, understatement. It's reflective, not a problem from a personnel perspective, but I think in our zeal basically to grow our content significantly, to serve mostly our streaming offerings, we ended up taxing our people way beyond in terms of their time and their focus, way beyond where they had been. He then specifically cites Marvel as an example. He says, Marvel's a great example of that. They had not been in the TV business at any significant level. That's not true. Marvel TV had been around. They did Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They did the Netflix, Daredevil, Punisher, Jessica Jones, etc., Iron Fist, Defenders. So Marvel TV had been around. They decided to basically end it and give Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios full control over that and kind of push Ike Perlmutter to the side, even though it seems like everything he was saying was right. But anyways, and they tried to villainize him too. Not only did they increase their movie output, but they ended up making a number of television series. And frankly, it diluted focus and attention. Now, I think you are seeing that as more the cause than anything else. So Iger was trying to say that the weak quality, the poor quality of all of those films and TV shows that they put out is because their employees were just stretched too thin and they were trying to do too much at once. I don't actually believe that whatsoever. But obviously, he is pointing to this idea that, hey, we need to actually get people who can run the ship. We need to get people that can do TV, that know TV, and let's get TV done. And I think that was kind of what his comments here were kind of hinting at that. I still don't think he diagnoses really well what the problems are, or at least when he is diagnosing them in public, I don't think he might not be telling the truth. I don't know, because clearly I think the problems have a lot more to do with the storytelling aspects rather than your people being stretched too thin. And obviously being stretched too thin could affect your storytelling, but you should also have people that recognize that they're being stretched too thin and cut it back. And so there's a lot of factors that go into that, I guess, is kind of what I'm getting to. But I still think that I still think that there's bigger issues at stake rather than them just being stretched too thin. I think their embrace of the DEI initiatives obviously is one of the huge problems that the Walt Disney Company has. That, and then they've completely destroyed their own brand by engaging in Florida politics, specifically being anti-parent and believing in the madness that one can change their sex and gender. But yeah, that's what's going on at Marvel Studios. They are going back to what they used to be doing with Marvel TV. They're going to be embracing a new old stock, as car collectors might know. You have the NOS stuff. They're going to be embracing the old television traditional model, And it looks like this does seemingly confirm what Script Doctor was saying about how the WGA deal might actually weed out woke diversity hires. A lot of what he was saying seemingly is coming true. Whether or not it actually weeds out the woke diversity hires, we will see. But it looks like his predictions about the WGA deal moving away from the mini room and going back to the more traditional pilot model are indeed coming true. We're already seeing that from Marvel TV. It is being confirmed by their executives.
Subscribe for more.